Hi everyone, it's Lynn Dion from Pink Whisper Designs. Today I'm going to show you how to create a cascading card. I'm going to give you all the instructions for cutting and scoring. So I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible, and we're also going to be using a brand new set of stamps from Art Impressions. So let's go ahead and take a look at these new stamps. This stamp set is called the Front and Back Snowman. So this is part of the Front and Back series. The nice thing about the front and backs is they're symmetrical. So when you die cut them, they line up perfectly. So these are great for your spinner cards, your see-through cards, your window cards, anything where you want to see both sides of your image. I'm going to get started coloring this in, and I've got some Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock. I've stamped this with the Versafine Onyx black ink. I added a little haze blue to the snowman and a little of the sugared almond pink to the cheeks. Now I've got warm gray number 4, and we'll add that to each side of his hat and pull that in towards the center. These are the Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens that I'm using, and these are a water-based pen, and I'm using my blender pen to do my blending. And I've got all the colors listed in the upper left-hand corner as we're going along. Now this video is a little bit longer. Again, as I mentioned before, I want to show you how to create your own cascading card. It does look quite complicated, but I'm going to try to simplify it as much as possible. And I will give you all of the measurements, all of the score lines and cutting lines, and I'll also give you all the measurements for the panels, for the layers of the card as well. So the way I kind of designed it was I'm hoping you can just follow along. If you do want to create the card, you can just follow along with the instructions for creating the cascade card. What I like to do when I'm creating a card like that is make a sample. So if you want to follow along, make yourself a sample, and then I like to keep all my sample cards in a little drawer all together. And it also inspires me sometimes when I'm not sure what to make or how to make it. I just go to my little drawer of my samples, and I can just kind of go in and recreate it and add any stamps or images that I want to add to that. So again, I apologize for it being a little bit longer, but I'm hoping to include everything that you need so that you can create one of these for yourself. I'm just going to continue coloring in our little snowman, and I'm keeping it pretty simple, just some reds and greens, pretty traditional, and I'm using more of a turquoise green, and we'll be using that color as one of the layers on our card. We'll also be using some really pretty pattern paper from the Art Impressions Valentine collection that will tie all of these colors together as well. And again, as I mentioned before, what's really fun about the front and backs is you can use these in multiple different ways. He can be showing through a window scene, or if you want to make an acetate card, you can see the front and the back of him. We're going to use it today in the cascading card so that when you turn the card around, you can see the back of the snowman. These are fun little stamps to be able to use in multiple different ways. And you certainly don't have to use the back of this. You can just use the front on a card. So it's got a lot of versatility, and the dies are included. I'm just using the steel die cutters that Art Impressions carries now, and I'm just clipping those apart. And then I've lined those up with some Post-it tape, and we'll go ahead and run those through the Sizzix Sidekick machine. I am going to put a little piece of scrap paper over the top because all of my coloring is done, and I just don't want to smudge anything. I wasn't sure my plates were completely clean, so I just add the scrap paper just to protect that. So we've got both of those die cut. Now I'm going back to the Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock to create our card base. What's also nice about this is these sheets are 11 inches by 14 inches. So we need a longer piece than the normal 8.5 by 11. We're going to cut a piece of cardstock at 8 inches by 12 3/4 inches. And all of these measurements are going to be in the upper left-hand corner as we're going along. The first score we want to make is at 4 1/4 inches. The next score is at 8 1/2 inch. Once we have those, we're going to come in from the side of the panel and we're going to measure up 5 1/2 inches on the left-hand side, and we're going to measure up and mark with a pencil 2 1/2 inches on the right-hand side. Once we have those two pencil marks, what we want to do is connect those two dots together. And that's going to give us two pieces of cardstock that will be the exact same size. I've got a long ruler here, and you can just go ahead and make a pencil line. You don't need to, you can just cut using your cutter if you want to, but I'm going to mark that with a pencil because your cutter may not be long enough to cut this long sheet of paper. So I've used a 24-inch ruler, and I'm going to use my 9 1/2 inch titanium shears to cut that. What's nice about these longer shears is you don't get that choppy look when you're cutting. It gets a nice smooth line across the cardstock. So I'm going to again follow that line all the way across, and that will give us two equal pieces of cardstock. And you can see that there. So now what I'm going to do is mark one of the panels, panel number 1, and the other one, panel number 2. That's just going to help us keep track of what we're doing here. I do find this a lot easier, and you can easily erase that later on. So let's grab panel number 1. We're going to start by making our cuts, and on this one we're going to cut from the bottom up, then from the top down, and then from the bottom up. So the first marking on our paper we want to make is at 2 1/8 inches. So just make a little pencil mark there. The next one is at 6 3/8. And the last one is at 10 5/8. The next thing we want to do is cut in from that long edge, which I'm referring to as the bottom of the card. We're going to mark in at the 2 1/2 inch mark. So I'm going to draw a pencil line, and then we're going to mark down 2 inches. So again, I'm referring to that little mark that we made earlier. So I'm going from that little pencil mark down 2 inches, and then I've got the 10 5/8 inch little mark here at the end, and we're going to go in 1 1/2 inches. So once you have that done, what we're going to do is go back to those titanium shears. We're going to cut in along those pencil lines. So again, here we're cutting in 2 1/2 inches. On this one, we're cutting in 1 1/2 inches. And on the top one, we're cutting down 2 inches. So you can see what that looks like. So let's go ahead and set that one aside and grab panel number 2. So now what we want to do is reverse our cut lines. So on this one, we went from the bottom up, then the top down, and then the bottom up. So for panel number 2, we're going to go from the top down, then the bottom up, and then the top down again. So let's go ahead and do our measurements across the bottom of the panel. So we're using those same measurements we used before: 2 1/8, 6 3/8, and 10 5/8. So that's exactly the same as we did before, and I just want to show you that there. Same markings. Now again, we're going to start from that top portion of this panel, and we're going to draw that line down 2 1/2 inches, just like we did before, only we're going from the top down this time. We're going to move to that next area and go from the bottom up, and we're going to go up 2 inches. And then for the last piece, again, we're coming from the top down into the card 1.5 inches. So it's just the reverse of what we did on the first panel, but the measurements are exactly the same. So let's go ahead and grab those titanium shears and cut right on those pencil lines again. And then I'll show you the two side by side so you can see exactly what this looks like. So there you can see the difference between the two. Okay, so now that we have those all set, I'm going to grab my Staedtler eraser and just erase any of those pencil lines. I would still leave the panels marked number 1 and 2 because that'll make this a little easier for you. This is panel number 1, so I'm folding on the score lines. And you can see that I'm folding like a Z-fold card or a fan fold. And then I want the two back panels to make a V in the back. So for panel number 2, I'm going to fold it back and then forward. So you can see when I line those two up, I get that nice V in the back section of the card. So that's what you're looking for. So I've got these two Z-fold panels. And now what I want to do is connect these two together. So I'm going to just slide these together. So I've got the two slits. I'm going to slide those into place, just kind of interlocking these together. Just takes a second or two just to kind of slide these right into place. And don't worry about moving the paper. This is a nice heavyweight cardstock, so you shouldn't have any problem. And now you can see we've got that zigzag pattern for our cascading card. So I can go ahead and collapse that and just press everything out nicely so we have some nice crisp score lines. And that's basically how simple it is to create this cascading card. So now once we have this portion, you can see that'll kind of move in and out, so it's really fun, it's really interactive. And this base can be used for anything. So, just get creative with this and use some of your stamps and dies to do some fun, creative projects with this. Now I've got the Lawn Fawn Mermaid cardstock, and I've gone ahead and cut some panels, and I will give you all the dimensions for these. I just want to show you that these panels are going to fit in these different areas of our cascading card. Now you can fill in a lot more of these if you want to. You can use pattern paper, whatever you want to do here. I'm just showing you where I decided to put the solid color paper. I've cut two panels measuring 1 7/8 by 2 3/4 inches. And on the long side of that panel, I'm going to mark with a pencil at 2.5 inches. And I can do the same thing for this other panel. You really don't need to do both panels, and I'll show you why in a second. But I just want to show you that on both panels, you're going to mark them at 2.5 inches on the long side of the panel. Once you've done that, what you're going to do is cut off that top section. So basically what you're doing is cutting from the 2.5 inch mark up to the corner of the panel. So all I need to do is lay this one on top of the other one, and then I can just follow right along and cut that corner off. So that'll give us the two panels with a little bit of a border all the way around, a little white border. So let's go ahead and do the next two. So these will be 1 7/8 by 3 3/4. So they're all going to be 1 7/8 inch wide. This one is 3 3/4, and we're going to make a pencil mark at 3 1/4 inches. So on the long side of the panel, we're going to mark with a pencil at 3 1/4 inches. I'm just using the glass medium mat to do my measuring. You can certainly go back to your ruler. And then I'm cutting from the corner down to that pencil mark. And again, that'll give us the angle that we need. I'm going to flip that over and cut that other piece just exactly the same way. Once I have them lined up, it's really easy to cut the two pieces. So now what I want to do is place these inside my card. So you can see we have those 2 panels done. Let's go to the third set of panels. So again, we have 1 7/8. They're all 1 7/8 inches wide. And then we're going to 4 3/4. And the other way to think about it is we're just coming down 1/2 inch from the top of the panel. So you can think of it that way as well. So let's go ahead and make that pencil mark, and then we can do our cutting. So now we've got those 2 panels. Let's go ahead and do that last set of panels. So these 2 panels measure 1 7/8 by 5 1/4, and we're going to make that pencil mark at 4 3/4 on the front of the panel. And then what we'll do is make our cuts, and we'll have the 2 panels for the very back of the card. So again, this is really simple to get these cut down to size, and hopefully you can just follow along. If you do want to create this, just pause the video as you're going along and you can get everything prepped and ready to go. So those 2 will be for the very back panel, which will form that V shape in the very back of the card. So I've got all my panels. I did mark each one that was the back. Obviously the ones with the pencil marks on them were the back, but I marked them all with a B for the back of the panels. I did that as I was going along, and that's just so that I want to do some spattering, and I want to make sure I'm spattering on the right side of the panel because they are going in different angles. So it's a little bit hard to tell unless you make those little pencil markings. So I'm going to go ahead and spatter all of these panels, and that's going to give it kind of a snowy look. I'm using my bleed-proof white ink to do that. And then here I've just got some Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, and we can go ahead and glue these down. And again, that's going to leave that nice white border all the way around the edges. So I'll just glue in a few more just so you can see what I'm doing here. Now, there are going to be some open white areas. So as I mentioned earlier, you could fill those in with some papers as well. I wanted some of that white showing, so I didn't add panels to every single section of the card. But that's certainly up to you. You can go ahead and do that if you need to or you want to. You could always use some pretty pattern papers here. So here I'm just adjusting that. With the glue, I have a little bit of time to slide that around. And then I'll finish putting the rest of these panels in place. So I went ahead and did that off camera. And now we've got everything glued down nicely. So again, you can see I have those white areas. And I kind of like how that looks because we're going for a snowy scene. So let's grab some Pixie Dust cardstock from the Lawn Fawn collection. And then my large snowflake dies from the Art Impressions collection. I'm going to just kind of decide what I want here. I thought those larger snowflakes were a little bit too big. I'm going to go for the more medium-sized snowflakes. I'll go ahead and die cut those from that Pixie Dust cardstock. And I need 2 for each one because we're going to be gluing these back to back just so that they will show from both sides of our card. Just using my tool in one to poke out all those little areas. And now you can see that pretty sparkly cardstock. Let's go ahead and glue these together. So since these will show from both sides of the card, we want to make sure we have that glitter paper on both sides. Once I have those all done, I'll give you a quick look at that. Now I've got some sequins from Spellbinders. These are the teal opalescent sequins, and look how beautiful these are. I love these because they don't have the hole in the center. So for this project, I think this is perfect. There's some different sizes in here. I'm just putting a little bit of glue in the center of each of these snowflakes. And there you can see how cute that is. Now for that one there, it has an opening, so we'll put that sequin in once we put the card together. I've got the hearts. I've got the scallop heart from the Nested Heart dies. We're going to cut that out of that same Pixie Dust cardstock. Then I'll take that next largest heart. We'll die cut that from some pattern paper from the Valentine paper pack from Art Impressions. And it's got those really pretty little hearts on it. This is a double-sided paper and you get lots of choices in here. And then I'm going to use some Strathmore Bristol smooth cardstock, and we'll grab that fourth largest die. Let's go ahead and die cut those, and that fourth largest die will be for our sentiment. So these will get layered up just like that. Let's go ahead and put a sentiment on this little heart, and that'll come from the Chubby Snowman set. And it says snow place like home for the holidays, but any of these little sentiments would work really well. That is the cutest little set, by the way. So now I'm going to place that heart in my mini Misty stamp positioner. I'll just line up that stamp. I've tacked it down with a little bit of temporary tape, and just so that heart won't move around, and I went ahead and did my stamping. Now I've got the Peacock Feathers Distress Oxide ink, and I've got a little blending tool from the Pink Fresh Studio collection. And this is a 1/4 inch round blending brush. I'm just going to go all the way around the edges. I'm using that small brush because I don't want to get too much ink on the edges. And that'll just help me control that a little bit better. So let's glue down that pattern paper heart. I've just placed something heavy on that so that that will dry nicely. And then I've got some scrapbook.com little small foam squares, and I've placed those all over the back of this heart sentiment, and we're going to center that. So now I've gone ahead and die cut those same 2 papers, actually the same 3 papers again, and we're going to add another sentiment on the back of the card. For this one, I'm going to be using Christmas Sentiment Set from Art Impressions, and we'll use that one there that says Let It Snow. So again, I did my stamping, and let's glue these together. And again, this is for the back of the card. You certainly don't have to do this, but I'm going to sign on the very back of the cascading card, and so I'm going to glue that one down flat since we have a lot of dimension already. I've got my red hearts from Buttons Galore and More. I'm going to add a little red heart down here at the bottom of this little heart. So let's go ahead and start assembling our card. We've got the heart for the front of the card. So I'm going to glue that right to that front panel. That'll keep that panel nice and flat in the front. So I'm going to place glue all over the back of that heart, and then I'll just center it here. The next thing I want to do is glue that other one to the back of the card. And again, that's going to kind of keep the card flat on the front and the back now. So I'm going to put that up towards the top a little bit so I have plenty of room to write a little note and sign the back of the card. And since I want him to show from the front and the back, I'm going to go ahead and glue him together. Just making sure I have plenty of glue right up to the edge. And then what I want to do is check and make sure where I'm going to place him won't make the card taller than 7 inches. And I was going to glue it right in the center, but I don't want to limit the movement of my cascading card. So I'm going to place him off to the right. And then here's where I'm going to check to make sure that it doesn't go past the 7-inch mark. So I'm going to lay it on my glass medium mat, because I do want this to fit into a 5x7 envelope. So if you want it to fit in that size card, you will want to double check and make sure you line this little guy up properly. So now I've marked that with a pencil quickly, and I can add some glue to the very bottom and glue him in place. And then I just want to check the back just to make sure I don't have any glue where I don't want it to be. Make sure he's nice and straight. And now I can let that dry. Once that's dry, let's go ahead and add our little snowflakes. So I've got a nice collection of snowflakes, and again, you only want to add glue to the areas that will be touching the card. For this back one, I want it to pop up a little bit, I just don't want it to pop up higher than my snowman. And then I'll add the rest of these in place. And I'll just kind of lay these out just to see what looks best. I did fuss around with that for a little while just to get the placement that I wanted. And then you can quickly go ahead and glue those down. Now for that one all the way on the left there, once I glue that down, we can place that sequin in the center of it. Since the center of that die gets cut out, I'm just going to make sure it's low enough on the card so that I have plenty of room for that sequin. I've got a white Jelly Roll gel pen. I'm going to add some little polka dots to the scarf, and I'll add a few highlights here and there. So do keep in mind all the products I'm using today are listed in link down below and also on my blog. And anytime you make a purchase, I do receive a small commission, but it is at no extra expense to you, and it does help to support my channel. So I really appreciate that. So let's take a closer look at the finished card. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.